For me, I think the biggest thing that football taught me was how to overcome adversity.
At some point in your life, you're going to have some tough times.
You have to have that next play mentality.
That cohesiveness and that working together, that's really something special that you can't get in a lot of other areas.
When you practice that and you live that in other phases of your life, it becomes second nature because all you know how to do is fight.
It's not an easy game. If it were easy, everyone would do it.
You start to appreciate the smaller contributions that people make. You don't just look at the big one because you knew it took 6 or 7 other guys who are unsung.
And you can't take shortcuts and be successful.
Doing what they do to make it possible for the guy getting the press clippings or whatever it might be.
In this game, whether it's as a coach or a player.
So I would certainly say that you definitely got a very quick lesson in how to overcome adversity playing football.
Welcome to another edition of Talking Ball with the Czar. I'm Emery Hunt, the Czar of the Playbook, here on the campus of Widener University with head football coach Mike Kelly. Coach, appreciate you taking time.
Pleasure to be here, man. I'm glad you're here to sit around in this office a little bit. Let's talk some football.
First of all, it took me a while to get here because of the vastness of this campus, man. And it's a beautiful campus. It's huge. You hit the ground running in 2014, going undefeated, making a deep run into the playoffs, and haven't had a losing season. And we both know the landscape of Division III is challenging, especially within this conference and in this area, Eastern PA, Jersey. How have you been able to find that level of consistency in this landscape of college football?
You know, it's not an easy thing in Division III because you really can't control your roster. You know, if I was athletic scholarship based, I could say, well, we need X amount of offensive linemen, X amount of defensive backs, and I could balance that out. Here, it's about who can academically qualify here, and then what's the financial aid package going to be for them. And we are an expensive school, but we're worth it. You talked about the campus earlier. We have a bigger school feel here than any other small school in this whole area. We've had surveys done that say we could go 1 AA. Now, I don't think that's going to really be in the future for us, but that's the type of campus we have. That's the type of academic programs we have. We have 41 different majors here. Most of our players are some form of engineering. I got biomedical engineers on the team. I don't even know if I'm smart enough to coach them. So we got all these engineers. We got physical therapy majors that when they come out after 6 years, they have their PhD. Wow. So I got to start calling my own players doctor. Nursing. Our guys aren't taking just basket weaving. And nothing against the basket weaving majors in the country, but this is serious business here, this is the most. I've been on 8 different university campuses now in my career. This collectively is the most goal-driven group of athletes that I've ever worked with, and they have a purpose as to what they want to do, and it carries from how they handle themselves on campus, what they do in the classroom, and then what they do on the field. And I'm fortunate to have a really good staff with me. I got Bill Shuey that was with me at the Philadelphia Eagles. I got Manny Matsakis that was with me with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Manny was also the assistant head coach at Texas Tech. He's been the head coach at Texas State. So I think we're a little bit different than what some other places are, and we're able to attract quality young men.
Coach, your track record of success follows you everywhere. You've had multiple stops. You were in the front office in the NFL, also coached in the NFL. You were an offensive coordinator for one of the more explosive offenses in the XFL, coached and was a GM in the CFL. All that success, Coach. You also was a head coach at Valdosta State, which we know is one of those premier D2 powerhouse programs. How has each unique stop in that journey has been great for you as from a personal development standpoint, and how has all of that helped prepare you for this opportunity here at Widener?
Well, at each stage, you're also at a certain stage in your life, you know. And when I got the Valdosta State job, there was a lot of hoopla around that. You know, Hal Mummy had just left with Mike Leach to go to Kentucky, you know, going from a D2 school to the SEC. I'm coming out of the CFL, you know, we set 29 records. One of them was the 713 yards passing in one game that still stands to this day. So I thought I was all that in a bag of chips, right? I was 38 years old. I got in that head coach's chair and I said, oh, I don't know a damn thing. It's because it's a whole different world when you got to handle everything. And, you know, you can be a good coordinator. That doesn't mean necessarily you're going to be a good head football coach. And you know, I have tremendous respect for Hal and Mike Leach, and you know, just think the world of what they do and how they've done it. And but I went in there and I almost had the mindset I'm going to be the anti-Hal, and that was a mistake. That was a huge mistake, because really I embrace more his philosophies than I don't, and so that hurt me down there. But you know, every one of these steps, I've been so fortunate. You know, at the pro level, I worked for a man named Cal Murphy, who won, I believe he won 9 Grey Cup rings and has a Super Bowl ring working with the Indianapolis Colts. He was truly one of my most influential mentors in my career. You know, he was the offensive coordinator when Warren Moon was winning 5 Grey Cups in a row at Edmonton. He was the GM when he hired Bill Polian as the player personnel guy of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And so I learned an awful lot from him, because I was with him every single day for 5 years. But then, you know, I was able to work with Galen Hall in the XFL, learned a ton from Galen. In the NFL, I was with Andy Reid, Joe Gibbs, Steve Spurrier. I took a little bit of something from everybody, you know, good and bad. And the one thing that I've learned is you've got to be yourself. You can't try to be anybody else. You know, I came out of a small college football in Ohio, and everybody thought you got to be Woody Hayes. You know, throw a Timex watch against the wall and rip up a crappy hat and get all mad all the time, right? Well, it's too hard to be mad all the time. I don't want to be mad all the time, right? You know, so I think by the time I came here, and I had been representing NFL players, you know, prior to taking this job, and you know, it's just been so many tremendous experiences. I think one of the things that helped me wasn't even in football, was being a professor of sport management at Drexel for 3 years, because now I got to see the student athlete from another perspective. I see those basketball players that just flew in early that morning from playing a basketball game the night before at Georgia State, and then they're coming into class and they're showing up and they got some good-looking breakfast sandwiches from a cart out in front of the building, and they got their sweats on, and I know they're tired. But I also know the demands that I was placing on them as a professor. If I'm doing that, there's other professors that are doing it, but then I also know exactly what the coach is doing and what he's expecting out of them. So it's given me a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different angles. It's allowed me to come here and you know, not hold the bird so tight that you crush it, but not hold it so loose that it flies away. And so it's given me some balance that has worked out pretty well.
Do you give that piece of advice to young coaches? Because I think a lot of times now you see guys, you know, they want to be that 24-year-old head coach. Do you like the way you kind of came into your own as a head coach?
Yeah, you know, it was good for me, really, the way my career was played out. And you know, in football, there's no career path.
Right.
It's like water. You know, you got guys that, you know, I know one coach that was the head coach at Alabama ended up being the head coach at Millsaps. You know, those things just, it is what it is. But if coaching is in you, and that's what I found about myself. I don't want to be singular in purpose, and I never wanted to define myself by what I did for a living. But the bottom line is, if you're a coach, you're a coach, and it doesn't matter what level you're at. You know, people have come up to me when I'm at speaking engagements, and they've started out their conversation with, well, coach, I'm just a junior high school coach. No, don't ever say that to me, because the junior high school coach might be the most important coach that kid ever gets, because that's the coach that's instilling the love of the game, number one, so the kid wants to continue to play the game, and number two, the basic fundamentals of how to play the game correctly. So to me, by the time they get to me, or whether I'm here or at the pro level, it's what that junior high school coach did to instill the foundation that is most important. And so I don't take anybody coaching anywhere for granted. And you know, again, all these experiences were good stepping stones for me. And you know, I can be bullheaded. I'm Irish. I'm from New England. You know, I'm sarcastic. I know I'm all that stuff, but I also know that I'm aware. And I think from being with those other men, seeing how the business of sport is run, seeing how an organized football program is run, and then modify it to the situation that I'm in. I can't run this program here at Widener like I ran the Valdosta State program or I ran the Winnipeg Blue Bomber program. This is unique in and of itself, but I have a good foundation in Division III. I hadn't been in it since 1989, but I had a good foundation. You know, I went in 1987 when I was at Capital University. We went to the NCAA playoffs, and that was at a time when they only took 16 teams, and so I had a good foundation of what it takes, and then went off, modified things, came in here, and it's just all kind of fallen in place.
You coached in the XFL. Short stint, but it was still exciting football, and one that at the time I was still in college playing football, so had a lot of interest in it because that could have been an option for a lot of my teammates and myself. But the development that takes place there, or took place there, what was that like, and how were you able to pull from that to here? Because I think a lot of development really happens at the Division III level.
You know, the XFL was, for me, it was a tremendous experience. You know, I was in Orlando. We had Tom Veet as our general manager, Galen Hall's the head coach, Will McClay, who's making a huge name for himself with the Dallas Cowboys right now, and their personnel department was our director of player personnel. And Will and I traveled all over the country at those XFL tryouts where, you know, every guy that ever sat on a bar stool and said, "Oh, I can play pro football," would show up. And you know, had that league gone, I'd have stayed right there because it was that good of an experience. And what you had were a lot of really hungry players. Now, 65% of our roster in Orlando had been on active NFL rosters, so they had gotten that little bit of sweetness on the tip of their tongue, and wanted it again. And that's what you have to look for, is that people that understand what it means to be a pro. There's a lot of people that think they can be a pro, but they don't understand what it takes to be a pro. And so those were the kind of people that we looked for. And it was very interesting. One of the reasons that Galen Hall hired me is because he had been in NFL Europe for a number of years. They never hold a draft. Their players are allocated. So he wanted somebody that held a draft. Well, I had been the original director of the CFL draft evaluation camp. You know, I was the director of Canadian player personnel with Winnipeg when I was their offensive coordinator. So I had conducted drafts, and that's what made me appealing to Galen, you know, along with some of the things that I had done offensively. But that's really where our focus was, and we didn't talk so much about how the guy was as a football player, because if he was in the conversation, we already knew he could play football. Right. It was what kind of person was he? Who did we want in our locker room? How do we put personalities together? How's that environment, how's that culture going to be? And that's probably what I learned from Galen more than any other guy that I worked with. And now I use the philosophy that there's really only two things a head coach needs to do. One is create culture, and the other is to maintain expectations. Everything else, X's and O's, if you got players, right, I don't care what you run. Players make plays, you know, and that's how it works. And you know, so I hadn't used a tight end in an offense when I went to the XFL, and you know, I got the job in the summer of 2000. I hadn't used a tight end in the offense really since about 1988, you know, and now I got guys that I got to develop that have aspirations of being in the NFL, and I'm coaching with a guy that was, you know, Galen had been the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma for 20 years when they were running the wishbone.
Right.
So tight ends were a big part of that. So now, and I handle my coordinators like this too. And I was really fortunate in my career, extremely fortunate, that as a coordinator, the head coaches would say, here's the parameters that I want this offense to be in, but go put your own stamp on it. And so I do the same thing here. And to me, that level of autonomy, you hire good people and you let them go to work. You don't micromanage them. I just, I can't function like that, so here I am in the XFL, not having used tight ends for a decade or more, and we got 3 tight ends on the
Right.
on the roster. And I'll tell you this: the very first play we ever ran in the XFL, and it was on the ESPN 30 for 30. We came out in double tight, double wide, single back. Okay.
Ace.
Yep, ace format. We faked the inside zone. Both tight ends stayed in and blocked. They were in cover 2. Both those safeties took a step up. Our outside receivers ran a post and a dig. First play ever we ran was a 51-yard touchdown pass from Jeff Brom, who's now the head coach at Purdue. He was our quarterback. So the very first play we ever call is a 51-yard touchdown. You want to talk about the Citrus Bowl erupting? The place went crazy. It absolutely went crazy. So you adapt and adjust to, number one, what the head coach says, okay? Because my first coordinator's job at Ohio Wesleyan in 1986, the head coach wanted to run the wishbone. We didn't have a running back that could run a 5 flat. And he wanted to run the wishbone.
That's the problem.
I was the fastest offensive player, and I was the coordinator. So that's where I started to modify the wishbone and break it and put some wing T concepts into it and get a guy a running start so he could at least get in the pitch relationship. So you adapt and adjust. To me, the main definition of coaching is putting your players in a position to be successful. So if you have this concept, this is the offense that I run. Well, if you don't have players that can run it, I was listening to Mike and Mike this morning, and they're talking about Phil Jackson saying the Knicks are running the triangle. Well, do they really have people that can run the triangle? And does the triangle work anymore against zone defense? Because the triangle was good against man.
Right.
Is it any good against zone? And let's face it, when he had
Jordan
Michael,
Pippen.
Yeah, and then goes over and he has Kobe
And Shaq.
and Shaq. It don't matter. It don't matter, because you could have 8 guys standing over here and Mike will go one-on-one and score 70 points all day. So you have to understand what works. Get your kids to buy into it. Give them the opportunity to be successful, and then you go with it. That's really what this all comes down to. And I look at some of these young coaches now, and I'm concerned about my profession. Okay, and I'm sounding like an old head here right now, right? But I really wonder what some of these young coaches know about technique, about evaluating talent, who fits in, who are your best 11 as compared to your 11 best, because they're so caught up in their schematics. This is our spread offense. Well, you know what? What we do here, is pretty similar to what Pitt has done in the last few years and what you'll see LSU doing, because that Coach Canada got a lot of his stuff from Manny Matsakis, our offensive coordinator, back to the Emporia State days when Manny was the head coach there. And then you look, Manny was on the staff at Texas Tech with Art Briles and what they were doing at Baylor. Okay, well, you watch Pitt and Baylor do this stuff, and we do the same thing. They got different cats at those schools, right?
It's a little bit different.
So we might run the same play, and we don't get a first down out of it, and people are yelling out of the stands, "This offense stinks!" Baylor runs the same play, and a cat with a 4.4 gets it, and he's gone. And they're geniuses down there. Oh my goodness gracious! Look what they're doing. It's the same play. It's who's got the ball in his hands. So that's really what all this comes down to.
You were a record-setting quarterback at Bluffton, and I enjoy watching you guys out there run your offense. You had a lot of pro prospects, quite honestly. I want to say in the last couple of years. I know a receiver was real good.
Yeah.
but your offense is high flying. You know, quarterback is working touchdown to check down. It looks like sometimes. So, but how is your offense? How was your offensive influence here tied back to what you used to do back in the day as a quarterback?
Oh, back in the day, the quarterback, shoot, I was just trying to survive. We had a really good flanker in those days, right? That ended up going to the Boston Patriots. That's how old I am, right? All right. I threw passes for the Boston Patriots and the St. Louis Cardinals.
Right.
So, I hit Moses in the head with a rock once, but it was one of my better throws. We ran. When I was in college, we ran split back veer for a while, the old Bill Yeoman Houston stuff, So, and when I first started to play quarterback, I was running true triple option, reading, I'm in 8th grade and I'm reading the 3 technique and coming down, then reading the end, and, really, I would have loved to play in the style of offenses now, I think the way the ball's thrown now, my skill set as a player probably fit better, because in those days, it was the Oakland Raiders. When you threw the ball, it was going down the field.
Right.
There wasn't a whole lot of dink and dunk stuff. It was when you threw the ball, it was meant to stick a dagger in somebody. And I can remember as a young coach hearing Joe Paterno talk, saying, we go into a game with, we expect to throw the ball 15 times a game. And, when I graduated from Bluffton, I was like, I think I was 3rd in pass attempts and 4th in pass completions. And they've been playing football there since like 1899, right at the turn of the century. And so I'm playing in the mid-70s, so it'd been a long time, right? I averaged like 12 passes a game. We set a record here. We beat Lycoming a few years ago, 48-7, and our quarterback went 48 of 75. Well, shoot, that was like 8 games for me. So it's just a completely different switch now. I can remember my dad saying, "Oh, I don't like the AFL. They throw the ball too much. That Namath guy, he's just throwing it all the time." Namath's quarterback rating was like 64 point something, right? If you had a quarterback that had a 64 point something rating right now, you'd be looking to cut him, because everybody's up in the hundreds because they dinking and dunking,
right.
So the game has evolved in such a different way. Manny Matsakis, our offensive coordinator, okay? Manny started American Football Monthly magazine in his basement when he was the receiver coach at Kansas State with Bill Snyder, okay? He went on to Emporia State as a head coach, but before Emporia State, he had been the offensive coordinator at Hofstra when Wayne Corbett was there.
Okay.
And Manny started out as a true run and shoot guy, and then the run game just wasn't sufficient. That's why you didn't see a lot of run and shoot teams. They put up a lot of numbers, they won a lot of games, but they never won championships. Very few run and shoot teams won championships because they couldn't run the football. Well, Manny took some old concepts of the midline veer and the jet sweep and combined it. So now when the ball snapped, we got a guy running right down the middle and right out here, and who's getting the ball? We're not going to tell you.
Right.
You got to figure that out after it's been snapped. So you put that in with some basic run and shoot passing concepts, which still hold up, and then you put in some play action and some counters and stuff off of that. And and Coach Canada down at LSU now, he's done a remarkable job of expanding some of that. But then Manny ended up being with Mike Leach with the air raid offense at Texas Tech. Of course, I was exposed to all that in taking over Valdosta and seeing what Hal and Mike were doing at Valdosta and in the infancy of that offense as it started to grow. And where I blossomed as an offensive coordinator was in the CFL. Now, we had great players, okay? This guy right here, Matt Dunnigan, was from Louisiana Tech.
Right,
okay?
You can still hear it in his voice.
Yeah, he broke all of Terry Bradshaw's records at La Tech. Well, he's the one that threw for 713 in a game up in Canada, and in the 3 years he was with me, he threw for over 12,000 yards up there. And so in 3 years, right? I took all those CFL philosophies, and as Manny and I, we weren't even coaching together. We would just always stay in contact. I've known him since 1988, and we would talk offensive philosophies, and we've kind of morphed this thing all in together now. And now, you know, we were throwing RPOs back in the 80s,
Right.
and we just didn't
Call it
have
that.
a cutesy name, because everybody has to have a cutesy name for their offense these days, right? And what they're doing, and so they can write an article or, you know, make a video of it or whatever. We were doing that back in the 80s, okay? You know, if you understand the wing T offense and you got a running back that's 4x2 from the tackle, okay? Defensive ends didn't quite know where to line up, because if they came out to the wing, we ran power up inside of them. If they closed down, we'd seal them and run the buck sweep out around them. So we would have our wings uncovered. So I just told the wing one day, look, if you're uncovered, yell into the quarterback white. And no matter what's called, the quarterback's going to take the snap, he's going to throw you the ball. Well, we had our head coach was a defensive-minded guy, and he said, Mike, that's not going to work. You can't do that. I said, let's just try it, okay? So that season, the second play of the season was a 72-yard touchdown on White. And he walked by him and he goes, I think this is going to work. You know? But, you know, we were running the trap option, and when you're supposed to crack 4 and stalk 5 and all those things that they try to teach, was that instead of just adjusting the blocking on the flank, as soon as that strong safety came out of crack, we just threw the slant right where he left, you know. So it was an RPO, you know, and we were doing that in 1987, 1988. You know, in the CFL we had draw plays that had hots built into it. So even if you were going to run the draw, if they brought extra pressure, we just threw the ball right where the hole was. So we've been doing that for a long time. And when Manny and I talk offense, it just kind of blends. And our biggest problem, honest to goodness, is that we have to corral ourselves, because we can visualize all of it. But you're only as good as what can you teach and your students can understand.
Right.
So we can't let luckily we're older, we're experienced at doing this, so we have to pull ourselves back and not expect some of these young kids here at the Division III level to understand what we were teaching to the pro level or at the Big 12 level. You know, we have to understand that and condense ourselves and put the kids in position to be successful.
Coach, I think a lot of people don't understand how important tradition is as far as college football.
Right.
Widener, quite honestly, has some of the rich tradition that we've seen across the country. A lot of people don't know about. Billy White Shoes Johnson, a guy that played here. How important is tradition to you, and how are you getting that point across to your players?
Well, you know, I'm excited about this season coming up, because our 8th win, and we will get 8 wins. That's our mindset. It has to be that. When we hit that 8th win, that puts us at 700 wins as a program. I think in all divisions, there's only like 35 schools that have 700 wins as an institution. There's only 5 schools in Division III that have multiple national championships. Right here at Widener is one of them. We've won the Middle Atlantic Conference Championship 20 times. I think the closest school to us has 13. You know, 14 NCAA appearances, numerous ECAC bowl games, you know, all those things. Tradition means a lot. You want to go someplace that understands the importance of what this program is. And, you know, you can go up and down this hallway and ask other coaches from other sports. When football does well, everybody does well. And I'm a true believer that athletics is the window to an institution, and football is the biggest window. You know, I can walk down the street right now and ask people, what color is Notre Dame's helmet? And I'll bet you I get 10 out of 10. If I get 9 out of 10, I'll be shocked. But if I ask them, what's the biggest major on Notre Dame's campus? If I get 2 out of 10, you know, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. You know, and the academicians can talk all they want, but the bottom line is, I know people now whose sons have gone to other institutions, not to be an athlete, but they want to have that college atmosphere to sit in the stands with a successful football program and cheer them on and be a part of that student body that gets excited about what that football team is doing. Nick Saban just got a $4 million signing bonus. Alabama's football program brings in $104 million a year. That $4 million is like, oh, yeah,
Right.
I got this in my pocket.
Lunch
Here you
money.
go. Way to go, Nick.
Exactly.
You know? But that's the reality of it. And even at our level here, we have a vehicle here with the traditional football to expose Widener University to far more of the general populace than any one of our truly outstanding academic programs. But football is going to get into the mainstream far more than what our engineering program or physical therapy program is going to get into. And so then people start to investigate, wow, they got a really good program. I just read about this school in Metro Philadelphia. Oh, well, look at what they offer academically too. And it all goes hand in hand. So I play on the tradition here very, very much. Last year at homecoming, we honored the 1981 national championship team, and we wore throwback uniforms that looked just like what they wear. Mm-hmm. And this year we'll honor the 1977 national championship team and wear those throwbacks again from when Bill Manlove was the highly successful coach here. And they're sweet. They're baby blue with gold numbers on them. Oh, it looks so nice. And but that's what we're able to do here. You know, we have a wonderful relationship with Under Armour, and they made these uniforms up. And there's nobody in the country, nobody, and I don't care what level we're talking about, that wears better equipment, and I mean helmets, shoulder pads, uniform, the quality of the uniform, than what we do. And that's important to me because I want these kids to have a true college experience, not just an extension of their high school. I want them to know that this is a different deal here. And that's all part of the process. So yeah, the Widener tradition here with Billy White Shoes Johnson, people forget about Joe Fields, started at center for 13 years with the New York Jets.
That's true.
And then another year with the New York Giants. He was the captain of the Jets. You know, he played here. I think over the years, 42 different players have signed NFL contracts out of Widener. And then, you know, since I've been here, we've been holding CFL, free agent tryouts on our campus. We've had one player that's played in preseason games now with the Calgary Stampeders. He's with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Anthony Davis, our receiver, went to the rookie camp of the Buffalo Bills. You know, so we're able to get some exposure here that other small schools just don't get. So this is the fourth winningest program in Division III, and I'm going to keep trying to do everything I can to keep us up in that upper echelon, but also expose the university. And when this university is exposed, people open up because it's such a beautiful campus. And our academics here are outstanding. I'm going to throw one little recruiting pitch in here. 5 years after you graduate from Widener, the average salary of a Widener graduate ranks 34th in the country. That's of all schools. So there's so much value into coming here with the football program, with the academics, tradition, how the campus is, the people that are on this campus. It's just a special deal.
Well, Coach, you pretty much sold me on the program.
But you can't play anymore.
I can't play
man.
anymore. My eligibility is up. But I do appreciate you taking time. And when you go around this campus, you see the tradition, you see the buildings, you see the facilities. Here is big time. I've been very impressed, and we'll be looking forward to seeing that 700 victory this season. Wish you the best of luck.
Come out and see us. You know, I appreciate it. Thank you.